A high-stakes poker tournament in Las Vegas. Millions of dollars up for grabs. Cheating allegations are rocking the poker world. Did this player, Martin Kabrhel, mark cards during an event? Or was it all just a ruse? A field with some of poker's biggest stars. But the spotlight was not on Phil Ivey, it was not on Dan Smith, but it was instead on Martin Kabrhel. This guy's antics were at least annoying, but were they sinister? Today, we take a deeper look.
Al not happy with Kabrhel asking for a count.
Speculating, like there were a lot of discussions about whether he was marking cards.
I mean, Al's had enough. He's over the antics.
I think it's ridiculous that he's allowed to play in the tournament.
Before we get going today, subscribe to this channel. Moving on. By this point, you've probably heard about this story through the thousands of posts across social media, many of the threads on Reddit or 2+2, and of course, even the mainstream media outlets have started to pick up this story because cheating allegations with this much money on the line in a poker tournament with over $5 million to win up top, this is certainly something that's going to garner some attention. Over the course of this $250,000 buy-in tournament at the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas, Martin Kabrhel was acting kind of suspiciously and holding his cards and putting pressure on them in ways that you might think would mark the cards. And then he was also looking at players in a way that made them think perhaps he was checking their cards for markings. And so this started to build over the course of the tournament where players began to get worried that there was potential cheating going on. We're going to show you some of the clips and break it down and get in depth into exactly what happened. Before we do, let's take a little backstory. Who exactly is Martin Kabrhel? My apologies to however you pronounce his last name. Martin has played poker for a very long period of time. If you go to his Hendon Mob, he's got results for over a decade, playing in many different tournaments around the world, although primarily he does seem to play at either King's Casino or in the Las Vegas World Series of Poker. Another interesting thing about Martin's play is he plays some very small tournaments, including a $350 tournament last year, and he plays some very large tournaments, final tabling this $250,000 event. With 14 years of logged results in live tournaments, you would think if this guy was cheating blatantly, well, he probably would have gotten caught by now. But Martin didn't just play on the live felt, he also played a lot on online sites. In fact, I vividly remember playing with Martin under the screen name Gomir some years ago, where when he would sit, the games would build around him. He would frequently sit the highest stakes up to 200, 400 no limit, and frankly, he was likely the worst player at the table, and games would build based on that. I'll add a note, I'm not 100% sure that Martin is Gomir, but I have some sources telling me that he is, so I feel fairly confident. We can see here a graph of his results playing online over the period of time where it was being tracked, and you can see they're not very good, losing most of $1 million. Oh wait, shit, that's Luke Schwartz's graph. Here we go, this is Gomir's. Not too different. Assuming this account is Martin, I'm very aware of the way that he played, which was loose, aggressive, and kind of wily, sort of crazy, and he didn't really manage to pull that off too successfully, at least online, but that is the kind of style of player that I know he is. Anyway, Martin has played a lot of live tournaments, as we saw before on Hendon Mob. In fact, he also played in a 300K event, the Super High Roller Bowl, which he won at King's Casino recently, and he also played it in Las Vegas. I think he is close with the King's Casino owner, Leon. With almost $12 million in live cashes, Martin is certainly an accomplished live poker player, but what is his attitude like at the table? And this is where we enter Martin's strategy. Let's take a look.
I'm speaking with my friend Ola. Can you be quiet? Thank you so much.
My friend.
You win.
I think you
After
win.
you go all in, I think you win.
He's trying to talk him into
I think correct.
I can't see most of your chips.
Yeah, but I have more than you, yeah? I have now. So it doesn't matter, right?
I think if it doesn't matter, why do you ask everyone every hand? I don't know.
From looking at a bunch of hands that Martin had played before and some hands he played in this tournament, Martin clearly likes to use speech play to try and get his opponents on tilt, make them uncomfortable, and make them make bad decisions. That's kind of his MO. I don't know what Martin's game is like today, but for a lot of players that might lack a little bit of technical expertise in the game of No Limit Hold'em, they can try and make it back in other areas by making their opponents tilt or making them uncomfortable. Well, this $250,000 tournament was certainly no different, and Martin wasn't exactly making friends. Trying to put your opponent on tilt in a massive high roller tournament? Only a jerk would do that. Okay, so maybe I had one moment, but after tournaments, I tend to be very gracious whether I win or I lose. Oof. I think I'm going to make a discipline laydown on this position. But back to this event, let's take a look at a good example clip of what Martin was doing in hand, in a hand he played versus Al de Carolis. Let's roll the clip.
1.2.
Nope, Peter Brown never massaged the table at the poker table.
1.2.
Massage for like 10 hours a day straight.
Getting a massage for like 10 hours a day, every single day,
Oh yeah.
without pause. Kabrhel probably checking again if they're already in the money. They're not. 11 places get paid.
Kabrhel, little stand up.
Makes the call. King 3 suited out of position. Interesting clash here. 2.8 million in the middle.
I don't know. If somebody was getting that close to my cards, I'll put my chips on top of that. But I don't know what the rule is.
Smack him in the face. Come on.
Okay.
Al moves all in.
All in. See, that's 6. Count for 6.
Can I get a count, please?
See, you want to be a jack off? I'll be a jack off.
You need to count.
Yes, sir. 6. I'm counting.
No. If he asks for a count,
Yeah,
I think he has to give
6.
the
2.6. It's 2.6.
There you go.
2.650.
while I admire the return of the jack-off behavior.
This is 600? Yep.
Yep. Those are 6.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
I say no.
Nice hand.
Thank you.
Al not happy with Kabrhel asking for a count. Donnie, what was that?
I mean, Al's had enough. He's over the antics.
Win some, lose some.
I often get accused of some sketchy editing here on the channel, and we do have to edit things down for the sake of this video. I cannot show you hours of live stream footage, but we can see a couple of things from this clip. We can see Martin standing up and leaning over to look at his opponents. Maybe chips, maybe cards, kind of unclear exactly what he's looking at, but it seems unnecessary because you can ask the dealer how much they have, or once you have a reasonable view, you can tell how much they have, and both these hands are played on his side of the table, so it's not even a very far distance away from his chips. So you can see this guy is annoying, standing up, getting people off their game, and generally unsettling people, and you can particularly tell this is happening to Dan Smith, who recommends that Al should be covering his cards with chips. I will say that if Martin could see cards in this hand, not playing it too ideal, because while this Jack-8 bluff is nice on 10-7-4-4 ace, this King-3 suited peel out of position versus aces with one pot-sized bet left behind, not exactly a great poker play, even if you didn't know their cards. But if he knows he's got aces, you really have to wonder what he's going for. This is not like deep stack cash where you're in position with a suited connector, in which case you could still lose a lot of money. I can say that personally. This is one pot size bet. Don't exactly know what he's doing. Later on at the table, Dan Smith called the floor to get some color ups for chips. Martin doesn't want to color up his chips, and there's a bit of an argument that breaks out between them. You can tell Dan is not buying exactly what Martin is selling with his logic.
Floor. Can we color up some chips? Yes, there is actually a schedule. Before then, I can't see a bunch of them because of the 5Ks. Thank you. I can't see most of your chips.
Yeah, but I have more than you, yeah? I have now. So it doesn't matter, right?
I think if it doesn't matter, why do you ask on everyone every hand? I don't know. I think it matters.
Because they have smaller chips than me. I do that. It's okay. Everything for them to be happy, okay? Everything for them.
Well, it is, in all fairness, the big chip should be visible.
I think it's pretty visible, but I agree.
It's definitely not visible.
Henrik, I agree with you as well.
Thank you.
But I would like to ask Mr. Ivey for opinion. But I think he doesn't give a...
Ivy hasn't cracked a smile in 3 hours.
This leads us to one of the craziest hands that was played by Martin and one of the reasons why people are so skeptical of this. Let's look at a flop 4-bet with air against a different player who was bluffing the flop with a 3-bet.
Check jams on you, you know, but Al just said, you know what, I'm just all in. And then he said, if you want to be a jack-off, I'll be a jack-off. You know, so...
In a fight between Martin Kabrhel and Al Cabrales, I'm taking Al 100%
Oh.
of the time.
I would take Al against 5 Martin Kabrhels. 4 of them would be too busy calling for the floor, while the other one was getting beat up.
Martirosian raising it up to 350. Kabrhel calling from the big blind. Kabrhel checking on this flop.
800,000.
Martirosian continues for 235, and here comes the check raise.
I'm not so sure Martirosian is the guy I would want to be check raising. He seems like somebody who's not necessarily going to just be given up very easily. We'll see how he wants to continue here, though.
Wow, there it is.
Told you. I mean, he's not.
Martirosian is not one to be messed with. Makes it 1.9 million. Action now back on Kabrhel.
All right, Martin, what you got?
We're down to the final 16 players. The final 11 will get paid, so massive implications here. A misstep could be very costly.
5 seconds.
Kabrhel doing some bookkeeping here, trying to figure out how much Martirosian has. I wonder if he's seriously considering making a move here, which I would highly applaud.
10 seconds.
Wow!
Clicks it back.
Martin Kabrhel out of nowhere. Ladies and gentlemen, did you just see that?
$3,015,000.
3,015,000.
No, euros. Euros.
Wow!
2 times
3 million clicking it back.
If you don't watch much poker, you might think, so what? They were both bluffing. But to bluff for a 4-bet on this flop with this hand, it's just not something that you see very often. Now, also adding in some complexity here, once again, a player has the ace of spades right after a player had the ace of spades versus him before, when 1 hour before that, according to this guy on Twitter, Martin actually had the ace of spades in his hand and played around with it for a few minutes before moving on. So in theory, it would go that basically he knows that a player has the ace of spades, in which case he can't really have an 8 because there's no 8 that the player would be opening pre-flop. Ace 8 offsuit probably wouldn't open, and then the suited 8 to the ace is not possible because the 8 of spades is on the board. So basically Martin would know that if he has the ace of spades, that he does not have a really strong hand. To be clear, that is a theory or an allegation, one that was highlighted by this person on Twitter @GameIKnow, with exact timestamps showing at 5 hours in, he heavily handled the ace of spades and then played those 2 subsequent hands against the ace of spades right afterwards. He posts 3 screenshots, one where he has the ace of spades clearly in his hand, and then 2 where he is against the player with the ace of spades and he's looking very obviously at their cards and chips. do we buy this theory? Well, it's difficult to say. I think that if he really knew that the ace was marked, why would you call a 3-bet against a player that's in position where you know they have at least one ace? Of course, the kicker can also be another ace or a king or a queen, in which case you're still toast. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me to peel with almost no stacks left behind with this king 3 of spades. In fact, king 3 of spades, it would be an especially bad hand to call with if you knew they had the ace of spades, because you will even have your flush draw dominated a bunch of the time too. So I don't really see how this is an indication in that hand. In the other hand, this is pretty goddamn crazy. You don't see flops with this kind of action very often, so I can certainly see why this looks suspicious. Then right after that, Martin runs another big bluff against a player where he asks how much he has and stares at his chips or cards for some time, and ultimately jams with a pair of 9s that turned into just one pair on a 4 flush board, and gets a better pair to fold. Would you make that play if you knew your opponent didn't have an ace? Well, it would certainly be a lot more attractive, but do we know that he had even been dealt the ace of hearts? It's possible he'd never seen that card, although I'm sure an internet sleuth will tell me otherwise. In one more clip of this day, we can see Martin clearly looking directly at Brandon Stevens' cards before deciding what to do against him in the big blind. Now, first off, I want to say thank you for the Reddit user FireApe1971 who put these all together. It made it really easy to follow along. But this is from the non-final table. This is just from the secondary feature table. So what could be happening here? Let's just go through a couple of things. First off, it is definitely possible that Martin is just a kind of splashy recreational player or a kind of splashy pro who makes lots of crazy moves, and when they're accurate, they look great, and when they're inaccurate, he looks quite bad. That would sort of fall in line with what I've seen from him online. However, some of these plays are extremely good. Obviously, this 4-bet on the flop is especially weird to me. You don't see that very often. And this pair of 9s turning into a bluff to get a queen to fold. Honestly, it's a pretty reasonable play, I think, with his hand, so I don't hate that idea, that concept, but it is still fairly sharp. That doesn't inherently seem super weird to me, given the situation. This king 3 of spades hand seems just bad, especially if you knew their cards. So I think it's probably most likely that the guy was just kind of playing crazy and getting in people's heads and making them nervous or awkward. But what are some things that could be happening? Well, of course, it's possible he is indenting the cards. The reason I don't think he's doing that is if you indent cards, the operator gets the deck afterwards, right? You can't unindent a card. So let's say I'm at a table clearly marking cards. Then the floor gets the cards and they see these markings. They're going to have footage of me marking it. I'm going to get banned almost immediately. So even in these moments where people show clips where he puts pressure on the cards or kind of like fingers them in certain ways, if he is marking them, it will be visible to other people. So it's very unlikely to me that's what's happening. I think it's almost impossible, or else he would have already been caught. So the other options are he's putting some kind of ink on them, in which case he would need some way to see the ink. He's not wearing glasses or anything, so maybe some kind of contacts/ink. A bit far-fetched. You probably would see the ink in some capacity. That said, I'm not totally up to date on advanced ink using maneuvers to try and cheat in tournaments, because I don't cheat in tournaments. Also, maybe possible you put some kind of grease on the cards or something. There are some ways that people can cheat in these situations, but it would be hard for other players to not notice something like grease, and some kind of invisible weird ink situation is also somewhat easy to catch after the tournament too. So I think the only maybe plausible way this guy could be cheating is it possible on this kind of packed rail, someone behind can see the cards of the players. I mean, certainly when Al looked at his pocket aces, could probably get a pretty decent view of that from behind. But if I was looking at someone with pocket aces and trying to tell my friend he's got aces, why would he then call the 3-bet? It doesn't really make sense to me. I feel like this is probably not cheating. I'm sorry, guys. I know you want the hammer, but doesn't seem super likely to me given these hands.
Martin's antics at the table are worse than anyone I've played with. People were speculating, like there were a lot of discussions about whether he was marking cards. Whether or not that's true, playing with him is unbelievably unpleasant. He's rude. He takes the full 30 seconds every time. And last night playing with him, it felt like something not kosher was going on. Can't know for sure, but I think it's ridiculous that he's allowed to play in the tournament.
That said, it's for sure at bare minimum unsettling and annoying, and there's definitely some % chance that he is in fact cheating. This brings us to the next point of the video, which I think is really important. What's the % chance someone is cheating where we have to then decide to do something about it? Because people seem to think online that any chance of cheating, we should ban someone. But that's a little bit complex, right? So like, let's just say you think there is a 1 in 1,000% chance based off something you saw. Does that guy get banned? Or is that too little? Or does it have to be 1 in 50, 1 in 25? Where's the line in which we ban someone? Or are you simply innocent until proven guilty? That's kind of the debate here, right? Should this guy get banned because he might be cheating, but we can't really see how or why, we have no proof? But at the same time, he's doing weird shit and he's making people unsettled and he might be cheating. What's the line? What do you guys think? What's the line for when we should ban people? When I woke up and saw Twitter, I saw outrage across the board. People wanting this guy's head on a stick. People being absolutely certain he's a cheater, he's a scammer, all this, that, and the other. I saw lots of posts, even from people that I respect in the poker community, weighing in. People like Andrew Robl, who weighed in to talk about this guy, saying that essentially this guy should be banned. I'm not disagreeing with Robl's take that this guy is annoying and people don't want him in the tournament. In fact, he tweeted about how if people took a vote in the high stakes tournaments, they'd probably all want this guy banned, and I can certainly see why. But I think what is happening here is Martin is trying to make his opponents uncomfortable with an illusion he might be cheating. I don't know why you would want to do that. And staring at their cards makes them feel like he can see them, in which case people play badly against him, and then they get thrown off their game, and he gets edge out of that. I kind of think that's over the line either way, to try and make people think you might be cheating. I think we should strive to protect our games and our integrity. But I also think that it's difficult from an operator perspective with what's the line and where we ban someone. You have to have a clear-cut policy. I do think that there is some debate on both sides here. Robl is tweeting saying that there's multiple videos of him marking cards. Okay, well, has the World Series Poker looked at the decks? I would assume that's something that they do. I doubt they just throw those decks away, right? I assume someone at some level at the World Series is going to check them for marks. And if there are no marks, what do you do if someone is just being really annoying and threatening or creating an illusion of cheating? What do you do? I guess you could just ban them. I don't know. One last thing here before we go. I know it's popular on the internet right now to call this guy a scumbag, cheater, piece of shit, stealing money, whatever. And I'm definitely not saying he's innocent. I really don't know. But I do find it kind of funny that I get attacked for all of my videos I've made along the years where I talk about things and I even say that this is my opinion or these are allegations or, essentially give the backstory and my opinion as to why. And I'm the evil bad guy for all those takes. But this guy with no proof whatsoever of actual cheating, rather just videos where we see him acting weird and looking at people's cards. Yeah, that guy's for sure a scumbag cheater, and that's fine for me. That's fine for me. But for you, Doug, different level of due diligence. Just gotta say, these kinds of things are gonna have people on both sides. And personally, I think that it's good to get those opinions out there. We need people to be trying to help make sure that games are safe. But I also think that assuming that this guy is 100% cheating just because you see weird clips where he's doing weird shit, well, we've seen some weird clips before, and yeah, we're never going to solve some of these things. That's for sure. In summary, the reasons that we think Martin is cheating is that he does make some questionable impressions on the cards, and then also does stand over and look at them directly. These things are both red flags. We also see hands that he plays extremely well and accurately with some moves that are uncommon against a player that had one of the cards that he has. The argument against is that he also plays some hands badly, like with the King 3 of Spades against aces. Also, there's a classic human emotion where when you're strong, you try and act weak. When you're weak, you try and act strong. When players are cheating, typically they try and do it in a sly way so they don't get caught or draw attention to themselves. This is anything but that. he is purposefully drawing huge attention to the way he is looking at the cards. This would not be the normal way people cheat, to do it so brazenly in a way that will certainly make headlines. And then the other argument against cheating is that he has not been banned from the World Series or arrested. If the World Series of Poker found cheating, you have to imagine they would do something like that. And I'm sure, given the fact that this story is now a national headline, I have to imagine they're taking this seriously and looking at these decks. I hope. Anyway, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you for joining. Hope you found this one interesting. I'll see you again soon.